Rewritten Part 1, same length, same flow. Refined storytelling. My $8,500 wedding cake was utterly destroyed, yet it turned out to be the best money I have ever spent. Why? Because sprawled amid that vivid red wreckage was my own sister, moments away from drifting into a deep, drugged sleep. She had deliberately slipped something into my drink at my wedding, planning to turn me into a sloppy, humiliating spectacle in front of my wealthy in-laws. I let her believe she'd succeeded, but the price she paid was far higher than she ever imagined. One quiet switch of glasses, a pleasant smile held in place, and suddenly the most satisfying image of my life unfolded before me. My beloved sister collapsing into crumbs of red velvet and shattered fondant. But to understand why my own flesh and blood wanted to ruin my wedding day, I need to take you back to the months leading up to it. My name is Pamela. I was 29 years old, a marketing director at a prestigious firm in Charleston, and I'd always taken pride in being composed, rational, and deliberate. My younger sister Sutton, 27, called herself an influencer, essentially a prettier word for unemployed, living a carefully filtered existence online. What she never shared with her 12,000 followers was the $51,000 in credit card debt she'd been quietly hiding from our parents. Our parents, Conrad and Blythe, had always favored Sutton. Always, no matter how much sense it made to do otherwise. I could earn straight A's, land scholarships, secure promotions, it never mattered. Sutton could post a selfie paired with a recycled Pinterest quote, and Mother would have it framed. Her jealousy hit its peak the moment I got engaged to Sterling. Sterling was an orthopedic surgery resident at the medical university, brilliant, steady, kind. His hands rebuilt shattered bones for a living, and his smile still made my heart skip. But what truly pushed Sutton over the edge wasn't his intelligence or his character. It was his last name. Sterling came from old Charleston money, the kind rooted in generations of power and influence. Ancestors who signed historic documents. Ships named after family members. Invitations to private garden parties at estates tourists paid to tour. It was the world Sutton had always wanted entry into and had never been granted. During wedding planning, she became unbearable. It started 3 months before the ceremony. I was in my apartment reviewing vendor contracts when Sutton arrived without warning. She breezed in wearing yoga pants that cost more than most people's grocery budgets and swinging a designer handbag I knew she couldn't afford. "I've been thinking," she said, skipping any form of greeting. "I should be your maid of honor." I looked up from my spreadsheet. "Sutton, I already asked Adeline, your lawyer friend." She wrinkled her nose. "Pamela, this wedding has old money written all over it. Do you really want someone in pantsuits standing beside you in photos that'll land in the society pages?" "Adeline is my best friend," I said evenly. "She's been there for me through everything. And I'm your sister," Sutton whined. "Your only sister. What will people think if I'm not your maid of honor? It'll look like we're estranged. That's bad for both of us. Besides, I need this. Do you know what this wedding will do for my brand? Historic Charleston Hotel, Sterling's family? I could gain thousands of followers. I should have said no. I should have ended it right there. Instead, she called Mother. 2 hours later, both my parents were at my door. Mother dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Father wore the familiar expression of disappointment he'd perfected over decades. "Pamela, sweetheart," Mother said, clasping my hands. "Sutton is devastated. I never said I didn't love her. I tried." "Your sister is struggling," Father cut in, his voice final. "The least you can do is include her. Make her feel valued. Just indulge her," Mother added. "It's one day. Surely you can be generous for one day." The manipulation was flawless, rehearsed by years of practice. "Fine," I said. The word tasted like dust. Sutton shrieked with delight. Mother smiled. Father approved. When I told Adeline, she paused. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But it's easier. Easier isn't better. She was right. I just didn't know how right. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sutton texted me, need you to pay for my bridesmaid dress. Short this month. The dress she'd chosen without consulting me was in $1,800. Silk gown from a boutique that served champagne during fittings. When I suggested affordable options, she laughed. You're marrying into old money. We can't look cheap. I paid without argument. Standing in that ballroom later, knowing what she planned, I finally saw the pattern. Every demand, every guilt trip, every sacrifice I'd made. Sutton didn't want to share my wedding, she wanted to sabotage it. The Charleston Historic Hotel ballroom glowed with southern elegance. Crystal chandeliers bathed ivory-draped tables in warm light. White roses and trailing ivy spilled from centerpieces. Candles reflected off polished hardwood floors. At the far end stood the cake 6 towering tiers of red velvet wrapped in ivory fondant, edged with edible gold leaf and cascading sugar flowers. It cost $8,500, worth every cent. Though not for the reason I'd expected, I sat at the head table exactly as planned. Image matters. Angles matter. Sterling sat to my left, handsome in his tux, his hand warm over mine. Sutton sat to my right in champagne silk, hair styled to perfection. Identical crystal flutes gleamed before us, filled with vintage champagne gifted by Sterling's family. As the plates were cleared and conversation buzzed, Sterling leaned in to whisper something that made me laugh. That's when I saw Sutton's hand move smooth, subtle tilting my glass as clear liquid from a vial vanished into the bubbles. No trace. No sign. Except Adeline saw everything. My phone buzzed. One message. Swap glasses. She drugged it. My heart stopped, then started again. I didn't react. I didn't blink. I looked at my glass, golden and innocent, and understood one thing clearly. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was war. This wasn't an accident or a prank. It was calculated, targeted, designed to annihilate my reputation in front of my husband's family. Sutton had planned this down to the second. She'd waited patiently for the perfect moment, counting on me to drink from that glass. She wanted me disoriented, unfocused, sloppy. She wanted Sterling's family, the prestigious, old money clan she'd obsessed over for years, to watch their new daughter-in-law unravel. To see me as a drunk, as an embarrassment, as a woman who couldn't even hold herself together at her own wedding. In that instant, the version of Pamela who spent 29 years swallowing her feelings, accommodating Sutton's tantrums, and nodding obediently when our parents demanded I make her happy, that woman died. I knew I had to act. Had to switch the glasses. Had to turn Sutton's plan back on her before it destroyed me. But she was right there, less than 2 feet away, her attention locked on the champagne flutes like a predator tracking prey. I sat frozen, hyper-aware of every sensation, the weight of my phone in my palm, the cold condensation beating on the poisoned glass, the sound of Sutton's breathing beside me, quick and eager, already tasting victory. She was watching the glasses. Both of them. I couldn't move. Not while her eyes were on the table. I needed a distraction, an opening. So I waited, heart slamming against my ribs. Sterling squeezed my hand, misreading my tension. You okay? He whispered. Perfect, I replied. The lie smooth from years of practice. And then fate intervened in the form of the most powerful woman in the room. I heard at first the sharp click of heels against polished hardwood. Expensive heels, the kind that cost more than some people's monthly car payments. The sound came from behind us, from the direction of the VIP waiting room the hotel had reserved for immediate family. The door opened, and Mrs. Eleanor stepped out, Sterling's mother was a force contained within 5'6" of poise and authority. Her navy Oscar de la Renta gown shimmered with intricate beading that probably cost more than my car. Silver hair swept into a flawless chignon. Diamonds at her ears caught the chandelier light. Her lipstick was freshly reapplied, classic red, immaculate. She walked behind the head table, heels clicking rhythmically in the brief lull between courses. Click, click dot, I felt Sutton stiffen beside me. If there was one thing my sister could never resist, it was impressing someone important. And Mrs. Eleanor was the most important person in that room, the matriarch of a family whose name adorned buildings, scholarships, legacies. Her approval opened doors. Her disapproval closed them forever. Sutton's head snapped around so fast it was almost comical. She sprang to her feet, stepping directly into Mrs. Eleanor's path with the enthusiasm of a golden retriever spotting its owner. "Oh, Mrs. Eleanor," Sutton gushed, her voice jumping an octave. "Were you resting in the VIP room? I hope the reception isn't too overwhelming. These events can be exhausting, especially when everyone wants your attention." She turned her back completely. To me, to the table, to the glasses dot in my mind. Adeline's text burned bright. Swap glasses. This was it. My only shot dot, my hands moved calmly to the bases of both champagne flutes. My fingers were steady years of handling delicate. Presentations had trained me for precision I'd never appreciated until now. I didn't lift the glasses. That would be too obvious. Too risky. Someone could notice a guest, a server, even Sterling if he glanced down. Instead, I slid them behind me. Sutton's voice droned on. "I must say," she continued, reaching out to lightly touch the sleeve of Mrs. Eleanor's gown, "this Oscar de la Renta dress was absolutely made for you. The beading, the cut, it's perfection. You have such an incredible eye. I was just telling Pamela how elegant you look." The silk tablecloth was ideal, luxurious, smooth, offering just enough resistance. I applied gentle pressure, pushing my drugged glass toward Sutton's place while pulling her clean glass toward mine. They glided silently, liquid barely rippling. Swish. I rotated the new glass slightly, turning the faint lipstick mark Sutton had left so it faced away from her seat. 5 seconds. Exactly the time it took her to finish complimenting the dress and pivot into praising. Mrs. Eleanor's philanthropic work at the Children's Hospital, no one noticed. The servers were elsewhere. Guests were engrossed in their conversations. Sterling was distracted by Uncle Richard, who had indeed cornered my great-aunt Miriam near the bar. But Adelaide noticed. I glanced toward the VIP table. She held her wine glass loosely, her eyes locked on me. When our gazes met, the corner of her mouth lifted in the smallest smile. She raised her glass just slightly at private toast. A promise. I knew then she wouldn't let Sutton out of her sight for the rest of the night. She would watch. She would remember. She would be ready. Mrs. Eleanor disengaged from Sutton with practiced grace. "How kind of you, dear," she said smoothly. "If you'll excuse me, I should return to my table." She glided away, leaving behind a whisper of expensive perfume. Sutton dropped back into her chair, practically vibrating with triumph. She believed she'd just scored major points with my mother-in-law, a moment surely destined for Instagram later. Her eyes flicked briefly to the table. The champagne flutes sat exactly as before, same positions, same golden bubbles, same innocent sparkle. No suspicion crossed her face. Why would it? They were identical. Her overconfidence did the rest. She reached for the glass in front of her, now the drugged one. Her smile was sharp, poisonous. "Come on," she said, lifting it toward me. "Let's toast to your happiness, Pamela." I raised my clean glass, shaping my smile with care, packing every ounce of delayed justice into it. "Thank you, sister," I said softly. "To a night we'll never forget." Crystal met crystal. Clink. Sutton drank deeply, eyes locked on mine, convinced she was watching my downfall begin. I sipped my champagne and watched her swallow her own sentence. The colorless liquid melatonin, whatever dosage she'd prepared, mixed seamlessly with the vintage champagne. She set the glass down with a contented sigh, still smiling. I smiled back and waited. After the toast, I made my move. I had to sell it. Had to make Sutton believe her plan was unfolding perfectly. So I went quiet. I turned slightly away from the table conversation and let my smile soften into something muted, distant. When Sterling asked me about the timing for desert service, I answered vaguely, my voice low and distracted. When David tried to pull me into a joke about the worst wedding speeches they'd endured during medical school, I offered only a weak laugh. Sutton noticed instantly. I could feel her attention on me, the way she leaned subtly closer, studying my face for signs that the drugs were taking effect. I gave her exactly what she wanted, a bride growing quieter, more withdrawn, just a little unfocused. The corner of her mouth lifted. She thought it was working, thought the melatonin was settling in, that soon I'd be slurring, swaying, humiliating myself in front of 200 guests and Sterling's entire family. She relaxed into her chair, practically buzzing with anticipation, her confidence swelling with every passing minute. What Sutton didn't realize, what her self-absorption made her blind to, was that the drugs were coursing through her bloodstream now, beginning their quiet journey toward her brain. The MC's smooth voice carried through the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite the best man to say a few words. The ballroom settled, conversations fading as attention shifted to the small stage near the cake table. David rose, buttoning his jacket with an easy grin. I checked the time, just past 8 o'clock. The evening was running precisely on schedule. He reached the microphone and within moments had the room laughing. Stories of Sterling's disastrous cooking during residency, the time he'd worn mismatched shoes to a formal hospital presentation, the moment David realized Sterling was serious about me when he stopped buying new clothes instead of doing laundry. The timing was perfect. David's speech created a buffer, a window where all eyes were elsewhere, where the subtle changes starting in Sutton's body went unnoticed. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She was still smiling, still performing the role of supportive maid of honor, but I caught the shift in her posture. The way her hand lifted briefly to her temple, the faint crease forming between her brows. Liquid melatonin acts quickly, absorbing fast into the bloodstream. Sutton would be feeling it now, a creeping heaviness, a gentle fog settling over her thoughts. She'd blame it on nerves or champagne. She'd never suspect the truth. David ended to loud applause and returned to his seat, clapping Sterling on the shoulder. Sterling stood to hug him, the photographer's camera flashing repeatedly. The MC stepped forward again. Thank you, David, and now we'd love to hear from the maid of honor. The moment arrived. Sutton stood. I memorized everything. The way she steadied herself with a hand on the table, the slight pause before stepping away from her chair as if gathering coordination, the brightness in her expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. She thought it was stage fright. I knew it wasn't. The drugs were settling in, creating that unmistakable lightheaded sensation, making her limbs feel heavy and detached. In 10 minutes, she'd be fighting sleep. But right now, she still had enough clarity and enough arrogance to believe she was in control. She walked toward the stage, steps just a fraction slower than normal, and positioned herself exactly where I knew she would, right beside the cake. Of course she did. The $8,500 red velvet tower with its gold leaf and sugar flowers was the perfect backdrop. Proof of wealth, of access, of belonging. She stood closer than the catering staff would have preferred. Her left hand held a freshly refilled wine glass. Her right accepted the wireless microphone, the the one that would broadcast every word through the high-end sound system Sterling's family had insisted on. Sutton didn't think about that, didn't consider what might happen if the drugs loosened her tongue. She smiled at the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice clear and amplified. "For those who don't know me, I'm Sutton Pamela's sister and maid of honor." Her words were still controlled, though I saw the effort it took, the way she stood unnaturally still. "I've known Pamela my entire life," she paused deliberately, "and it's been quite a journey watching her find someone worthy of her." Polite laughter rippled through the room. Pamela has always been the responsible one, the organized one, the one with the perfect plans and the perfect career. There was an edge beneath the sweetness now. And now she has the perfect husband from the perfect family. My hand found Sterling's under the table, gripping tight. He squeezed back, unaware of what was unfolding. Sutton lifted her glass slightly, the liquid catching the light. "So here's to Pamela," she said, smile sharp and artificial. "To my perfect sister and her perfect life." Glasses lifted. Applause followed. But I watched. I waited. The applause was still echoing when Sutton raised her glass higher, her performance flawless, the loving sister, the gracious bridesmaid. "To my sister and her new husband," she announced, her voice taking on that rehearsed influencer lilt. "May your marriage be everything mine will be someday." Approval murmured through the crowd. Sterling's fingers tightened around mine. Sutton brought the crystal flute, my original glass, to her lips and took a long, confident sip. The change wasn't immediate. She lowered the glass, still smiling. Then I saw it. The wobble. The way her free hand reached for the podium. "Thank you all for..." Her words blurred. She blinked rapidly, eyelids heavy. The glass trembled. Adeline leaned close. "How much did she use?" "I don't know," I whispered back. "But by how fast it's hitting her?" "Too much." Sutton swayed visibly, knuckles white around the microphone stand. The ballroom fell silent as 300 guests watched her facade fracture. "Why?" she asked, voice cracking through the speakers. "Why is the ceiling spinning?" The wine glass slipped first, tumbling in slow motion before shattering against the stage floor with a sharp, final crack. Then her legs gave out. She pitched forward, still clutching the microphone, gravity taking over. The impact was devastating. 6 tiers of red velvet cake, $8,500 of artisanal perfection collapsed on contact. Sutton's face struck first, then her body, her $1,800 gown vanishing into frosting and crimson crumbs. White buttercream smeared with red looked grotesquely like a crime scene. She lay motionless, hair matted, dress ruined. My mother's scream cut through the silence. "Sutton." Sterling was already moving. Training took over. He reached the stage in seconds, dropping to his knees. "Cut the music," he ordered. The quartet fell silent. He rolled Sutton onto her side, cleared frosting from her airway, checked her pulse, lifted her eyelids, his hand steady, professional, as the room watched in stunned horror. He examined her pupils, his expression darkening with each assessment. The entire ballroom seemed to stop breathing. David stood rigid at the head table. Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. My father forced his way through the stunned crowd, his face drained of color. The motion of being rolled onto her side jolted Sutton slightly. Her hand remained clenched around the microphone, the wireless device scraping across her chin as Sterling repositioned her. In her delirium, her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. She stared directly at Sterling, but I knew she wasn't truly seeing him. "No." The word slipped out broken, barely audible, but the microphone, resting inches from her lips, amplified it perfectly. Her voice echoed through the ballroom speakers, thin and distorted. "Wrong glass, the direct glass." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Time froze. Every person in that ballroom heard it. The words were slurred, confused, but unmistakable. Wrong glass. Direct glass. The implication was unavoidable. Sterling's hands went still. Slowly, he lifted his head, his gaze traveling from Sutton's crumpled body to my parents standing at the edge of the stage. His expression was ice. "She isn't having a stroke," he said calmly. "This is synergistic toxicity alcohol potentiating a central nervous system depressant. These are classic symptoms of a sedative overdose." My mother made a stringlet sound. "What? No, that's not," she wouldn't. Sterling had already pulled out his phone. He called 911, explaining the situation in clipped medical language before ending the call. My father finally found his voice. "This is absurd. Sutton would never. There must be some mistake." Sterling stood, towering over them. The look he gave my parents could have frozen fire. "You will go to the hospital with her," he said. "I won't call the police tonight." He paused, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "But if anything else happens, I won't extend that courtesy again." The threat landed hard. My father, who had spent my entire life bulldozing over everyone in his path, actually stepped back. He opened his mouth, then shut it, completely silenced by Sterling's authority. The ambulance arrived within minutes, one of the few benefits of a downtown Charleston venue. Paramedics lifted Sutton onto a gurney, frosting still smeared across her face. Cake crumbs tangled in her hair, her dress destroyed. My mother climbed in without a word, wearing that familiar expression of tragic martyrdom. My father lingered at the entrance, looking back at me with something unreadable: accusation, guilt, fear. I met his stare and didn't flinch. Then he turned away, and the ambulance disappeared into the night. The ballroom dissolved into chaos. Guests clustered in shocked whispers. Hotel staff hovered, unsure. The cake lay ruined, a crimson monument to the night's unraveling. I stood at the head table, Sterling's hand steady in mine, and felt something unexpected wash over me. Relief. Adeline appeared beside me, holding up her phone like a prize. "I recorded everything," she said briskly. "The fall. The confession. Audio is crystal clear." She tapped the screen, and Sutton's voice played again. Wrong glass. The drugged glass. Nearby guests heard it. The murmurs intensified. I watched the truth ripple outward, undeniable. The golden child. The favored daughter. She had confessed to attempted poisoning in front of 300 witnesses. The hunter had become the prey. Eleanor approached, her Oscar de la Renta gown somehow untouched by the disaster. She surveyed the wreckage, then looked at me. "Well," she said dryly, "this is certainly the most memorable wedding I've ever attended." The hotel manager hurried over, wringing his hands. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so terribly sorry. Should we end the reception?" I looked at the destroyed cake, $8,500 reduced to rubble, and felt only lightness. I turned to Sterling. His eyes searched mine, concerned but not pitying. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "This is the first time I've seen you breathe since we got engaged." He was right. For months I'd been managing my family, paying for peace, bending to prevent exactly this. I'd done everything, and she'd still tried to drug me. But now, the monster was gone. I faced the manager and smiled, truly smiled. "Clean it up. Bring out more wine and whatever desserts you have. The night isn't over." He blinked. "You want to continue?" "This is my wedding," I said firmly. "And I'm celebrating with the people who actually care." Something shifted then. The guests who came for appearances slipped away. Those who remained were ours friends, colleagues, chosen family. Music resumed. Desserts appeared. Champagne flowed. I danced with Sterling beneath the chandeliers, years of tension finally dissolving. No regrets? He murmured. None, I said, meaning it. The next morning, my mother texted, "How could you let this happen?" She felt left out. She made a mistake. Family is family. I read it twice. Then I deleted it, blocked her number, then my father's, then Sutton's. One by one, the threads snapped. A year later, at a prenatal appointment, the technician smiled. "Your baby girl is perfect." Sterling squeezed my hand. "No golden child," I whispered. "Never," he agreed. That night, I typed my story online, asking the questions that mattered. Then I closed the laptop. Inside, Sterling cooked dinner, humming. My daughter kicked. I pressed my hand to my belly. The cake was destroyed, the lies exposed, the cage broken, and I had never been freer.